So again, this is Stump the Curator, hosted by the DesPlains History Center. I'm Philip Moore, the Executive Director. Um, I started this career, I started planning for this career as a freshman or sophomore in high school. I had a history teacher that really kind of sparked the interest in history in me. And I wanted a history career that did not involve teaching at the time. And so I thought becoming a museum curator was a good way to go about it. Uh, I grew up in the suburbs of St. Louis, and then for college, I went to Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri, where I took a BA in history with a thesis in the Nazification and the denazification of music composition in theory. Um, and I also started working at the age of 19 on campus at the National Churchill Museum. Westminster College was the site of Winston Churchill's 1946 Iron Curtain speech that heralded the beginning of the Cold War, not long after the end of World War II and the fall of the Iron Curtain. After my BA, I went to Eastern Illinois University in Charleston, downstate, for a master's in historical administration, where I worked in the university archives and the Illinois Regional Archives Depository. I worked 2 contracts at the Maine State Museum in Augusta, Maine. And then I returned to Eastern Illinois for a second master's in American history. And then my first job out of that program was in September 2013. I joined the staff here at the DesPlains History Center part-time at first as curator. And then in 2018, May of 2018, I was promoted to executive director. So I will pass it over to Emma.
Well, hello, everyone. Again, a lot of familiar faces, which is wonderful. So this might already be familiar to a little bit to some of you, but just a bit of background. I have two bachelors, one in ancient studies, one in English, and my master's is in public history. But I've been in and out of all sorts of local history museums for quite some time. I have a family who work over at the Elgin History Museum. So local history in the area I've been involved in for all across the suburbs, including Bartlett, Elgin, and then now DesPlains. I have been with the DesPlains History Center since 2018, where I've gotten to talk to the kids about all sorts of different topics, everything from Revolutionary War era codes to Civil War, and the lives of the soldiers. And more recently, we've been working on the exhibit on flight. So that's been a fun way to get the kids involved with some aviation, and we can sneak some of the education into the fun bits when the paper airplanes. Yeah, I've been kind of all over the place from different cultural organizations, so I am looking forward to seeing what you guys can throw at us, and hopefully I can live up to all of it. Siobhan, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I'm Siobhan Harity. I'm curator of collections here at the History Center. So exhibits and collections management and also research requests those are a lot of the things that I work on here. And I also joined the History Center in 2018, a few months after Emma. Prior to that, I, like Emma, have bounced around a lot of museums in the suburbs up here. I've been at the West Chicago City Museum, the McCormick House at Cantini Park. I did tours and school programs there for a few years, and the Lake County Discovery Museum, much further north of us here in DesPlains. But I did my undergrad in history, and my concentration was modern Europe, so I really tried to do as much of 20th century Europe as I could. That's my one true historical love. I did my master's in public history at Loyola here in Chicago. So I never really left the Chicago area after grad school, and growing up here as well. So that is my background.
And now that we've all been introduced, I want to acknowledge our fantastic funding from the City of DesPlains and the DesPlains Park District, our members and other donors, our Coffee Talk sponsor, Village Bank and Trust, just up the block here at Pearson and Ellenwood. All of these make not only programs like this possible, but just consistent staffing. We're very fortunate to have for a local history museum to have full-time professional staff to be able to offer all of our services. So thank you to everyone who helps make that possible. So the way it's going to work tonight is, I know a lot of you have brought questions, some of you one question, some of you multiple questions. We're trying to focus on DesPlains local history questions. But if you think you can stump us with anything else, once we've gotten through DesPlains history, we might have time at the end. We're gonna let everyone ask one question, and then if you have a second or third question and we have time, we'll get around to it. Down at the bottom of your screen should be a reaction button, and you can raise your hand. And that's how we'll know that you have something that you'd like to contribute, a question or a comment. So please do that, and we'll call on you and help you unmute so that we're not all going at once. So if everyone who has a question would go ahead and raise your hand, we'll get it started. See if we can stump the curator. Okay, Linda, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. So my question is actually down the street from me, there's an earth house, and the address is 470 Northeast River Road. And I wondered what the history is on that and what was the purpose of the earth house.
Instantly stumped. I have not heard of this Earth House before. Siobhan, have you come across that?
I have not, no. This is the first, yeah.
I'm gonna pull up a map here and just see where that is. Can you tell us any other structures that are surrounding it?
Houses, just old houses. There's a horse barn down the street on Northeast River Road also. But other than that, Forest Preserve, it's between Gulf and Central.
Right. I kind of know the area. I know that there's horse stables in that area.
Well, you'd be able to pick up the what the structure sort of looks like if you go on to Zillow, I think it is, 470 Northeast River Road.
Right. That's pretty unusual for this landscape, just because in a temperate climate where there's so much rainfall, the structures would become dilapidated fairly quickly. So I'd be interested in looking that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Stump the Curators.
I'm keeping a little score tally. So we're gonna put 1 in Stump, and we'll follow up with you if we find anything out. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So already the audience is winning. Okay, we're gonna remute you, Linda, and we're gonna go to Stephen. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Stephen Giese.
Okay, I've got zero confidence that I can stump you after that. But this is just more something I'm never clear on. So before we had the city of DesPlains, they had Rand and Orchard Place, is that correct? Okay. And this is kind of a geography question. So what's the order of what was here, and the borders similar or the same as modern day DesPlains?
Okay, I am going to pull up Google Maps and share my screen and see if I can effectively use technology to tell this story. Okay, can everyone see the map? Okay, and can you see my cursor as well? Okay, I will use the cursor to point. So here we are centered on DesPlains, downtown DesPlains. So Minor and Graceland and Lee, this area here. This area, this kind of triangle area, Graceland, Minor, and Thacker, is what was known as the town of Rand. There was a early landowner named Socrates Rand. He actually occupied this land before the federal survey in 1841. He was a squatter, or what's formerly known as a preemptor of the federal township survey system. He was out here in federal land after the expulsion of the Potawatomi natives, and he then got first claim. Once the survey came through, he had first dibs on buying that land formally from the federal government. And in fact, we recently got a donation that has the land deeds for that included in it. And so later on, he subdivided this land and sold it in house and business lots. And the reason he did that is the railroad started coming through in 1854. So this was the prime real estate to have. And everyone wanted to buy it, being close to the train depot, which is essentially the same location as the current Chicago Northwest or UP Northwest depot in downtown. So this became what was known as the town of Rand, the land that he subdivided. And that was an informal, unincorporated nomenclature. It was not an incorporated town. In 1869, the town incorporated, and they took the name DesPlains after the river, rather than taking it after founding father Socrates Rand. So that's the original DesPlains, town of Rand, and then the town, village, and city of DesPlains there. You mentioned Orchard Place, which is further south, but in between DesPlains and Orchard Place was the town of Riverview, and that's essentially the area between Oakton and I don't think quite as far south as Toohey. We'd have to double check that. But this area along the Sioux Line Railroad that came in a little later, I think they started service in the early 1890s. This area southeast of Oakton and Lee, north of Toohey, west of River, the old town of Riverview. And if you've ever noticed this little curved street over here next to the railroad, Circle Street, that actually runs along what used to be, there were railroad spurs that came off and into Riverview to feed the industry that they wanted to build there, and the town that they wanted to build there. It never got very big. It met with failure and was later subsumed by DesPlains expanding southward. And then further south of Toohey, more near where Higgins and Mannheim is, a lot of area that's been consumed by the tollway and O'Hare. This area was Orchard Place, an unincorporated town along the railroad that centered close to the railroad, and it was a farming community, and it lent its name to Orchard Airfield, which is where they put the Douglas aircraft plant in World War II, and from there built O'Hare Airport and Orchard Place, Orchard Airfield. That's why O'Hare is still abbreviated ORD in the code system. So there's several little tidbits of information.
Yeah, and Orchard Place got its name. It was originally the Scott family owned that property, and when the railroad came through, just like what Socrates Rand did, they decided to subdivide some of their land, sell it as lots. And when the railroad came through, they named the depot there Orchard Place after Scott's orchards, which were mostly apple orchards. And so that was where the name for Orchard Place came from.
Okay. I'm going to put that one in the answered column. Okay. Dr. Phillips, you had your hand up. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. I know all about the property at East River Road. I knew the gentleman who owned it. He used to live 3 blocks from where I live on Lincoln Avenue near Gulf Mill Shopping Center. He was a contractor, a concrete contractor, and his daughter, my daughter, were about the same age, and they occasionally played together. And he did concrete work for my house. And he moved there after his previous house burned down. He moved out of there, unfortunately, when his next house moved down, burned down. And then he bought the property on East River Road, and he proceeded to build a earthen home, but it didn't match any of the codes in the city of DesPlains. So they shut it down, and he later on, I understand, went out and bought another home somewhere else in the suburbs out further that was shaped like an airplane. He bought it from a pilot and lived in this house that was a replica, or maybe it was an old, a large airplane, but that's where he lived from what the story I heard. So it's been vacant ever since. And I don't know what happened there, but nothing ever happened. So
Well,
that's it.
I never understood how it got that far, because he couldn't get any of the permits. And like you said, it didn't meet any of the codes. And as you also said, they shut him down, but I don't know how he even got started. That's what always amazed me.
I believe he just started and didn't.
Yeah,
follow
on his own.
the codes. That was the problem.
Yeah, it's easy to get a project done if you don't ask for permission.
Nobody sees you.
Dr. Phillips, maybe we can talk about that sometime and get this truly documented here at the museum.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Did you have a question also you wanted to ask?
I did, but mine, I got 5 of them, and I got to pick the worst one. I figured you won't figure out, but maybe you could. What was the best place to get your feet x-rayed in 1958 in DesPlains?
I'm going to guess that you would say Square Deal Shoes.
Yeah, get out. And it's still there. The machine's still there.
Yeah. So, do you want to tell about it, or should I go on?
Well, I'll tell my version. You tell yours. Like I said, when we were kids, we'd come into town with my godmother, drove the car, Nellie Bell, and they'd load us all up, and we'd run amok in the town, and went to a variety of our favorite places. One of them was Square Deal Shoes to get a look at our feet in the X-ray machine, and the machine's still there, but it's not operational. I was there a few weeks ago, so that's it. So what's your version?
Well, I can't say that I have any other version, but part of what we're doing tonight is showing off exactly how we go about doing research here.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
I'm trying to find myself. So we have research files on a lot of local businesses, people, biographies, city organizations, nonprofits, churches, and in these files, we
Yeah.
have newspaper clippings and research notes. So when you call us, if people call us and we can't answer directly over the phone, this is what we go and pull first, because
Yeah.
this is research already done by decades of people working here, volunteers and staff. So
You
yeah.
got a picture of my feet?
Your feet specifically, no.
No, oh, damn.
But yeah, they still have the machine in Square Deal shoes. They won't turn it on, I don't
No.
think. But yeah, it was kind of a common practice to have an X-ray machine in the shoe store. It's a bit of a gimmick, but it also shows you truly how the shoe fits around your toes. It's important to have good fitting shoes. Siobhan or Emma, you have anything to contribute?
Only that I don't believe they let them do that anymore.
Yeah, X-ray
Um,
machines are a regulated industry.
My dad worked at Sears, and we would go twice a year to get shoes, and it was more fun to stick our feet in the X-ray machine than it was to get the
Exactly.
shoes, because I wanted to see what my feet looked like in the shoes.
It's a very cool example of what was at the time a newer technology kind of being used with the public and kind of showing people what it could do. But yes, for obvious reasons, I highly doubt the good folks at Square Deal still turn it on.
Yeah, even if it worked. Okay. Kathy, since you were unmuted, did you have a question?
Oh yeah, I was just doing the reaction. Yes, I have a street name. Do you know what the original name of Hollywood Avenue was?
I know what map I would look at.
This
If
is
you-
why I figure I can't stump you, Mr. Map.
Well, I don't know everything off the
Map.
top of my head.
Huh?
That's why we have the map collection. Philip, I don't know if you want to take a second to do a little bit of research and we can answer some other questions.
I can run and grab the folder on the Manor subdivision.
Oh, you stinker.
That's why this is exactly why we have all these wonderful records, because DesPlains has such a rich history and we only have so many brains hard at work at the History Center.
Well, it's a two-part question. Do you know the original name of Hollywood Avenue, and when did it change names? That's the part I don't know.
Well, there we go. Maybe once Philip gets the map of the manor all set, we'll be able to hear it all. Well, in the meantime, oh, Philip's already got it. Perfect.
No, go on. I still have to look through the box.
I was just going to say, if anyone has any other questions that we can talk about in the meantime, I don't know if who's has their hand raised, or if you want to even just put it in the chat box off to the side. We'll see if we can't get through a few more here.
Well, Philip wasn't here when I had the second part of the question, Philip, is when did the name change?
Luckily, it's our work that involves not just knowing the answers, but knowing how to look for them in our collection. So we'll see what Philip comes up with. Let's see. Dr. Phillips, I know you had your hand raised. I just want to make sure we give everyone else a chance if they've got more questions before we start moving on to second ones. As a reminder, go ahead if you do have a question, since we're muted. If you want to use the reaction function and raise your hand, that'll help us see you in our crowd here. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and yeah, Dr. Phillips, go ahead.
We can't hear you.
PKs, can you hear me now?
All right, there we go.
PKs, what was PKs?
That's an excellent question. I don't know. Hmm.
Can you spell that?
Yeah, can you spell it?
PK.
You guys have come up with some good ones tonight.
Yeah, comes from a guy who was 8 years old in downtown Des Plaines. Well, you're stumped, I'll tell you. You're not going to look it up.
Yeah, we have to dance this one at the top of our heads. I can't think of anything, so I think you should go ahead and let us know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
You got something?
No, I am not sure. I'm not familiar with that one.
It was a store in the town. It was there for many, many years.
What did it sell?
Keys,
Yeah, give us a few hints here.
papers, and keys. P and K.
Oh.
Where was it?
It was near the train station originally, and they also sold comic books and magazines.
Oh, is that
So,
funny?
when I was a kid, we would go and buy our comic books there. And they also saw, and then they moved down, later on, they moved down on Graceland, I think, near where the, what was it? The farm store was around there. So they were there probably, I hate to say how old I am, but from the time I was a child till the time I was out of college and teaching in DesPlains, probably 50 years. So, and it was always called PKs.
Okay,
That's-
I've brought a visual aid
You
Uh,
found it?
to answer Kathy's question.
Oh, I knew he'd find it because he's a map geek.
So I don't know how clear it is, but here's a land sale map for what's known as DesPlains Manor.
Mhm.
DesPlains Manor 1 and 2. DesPlains Manor 1 is this triangle section of DesPlains between Graceland and the Sioux Line Railroad tracks. And then Desplains Manor 2 is west of the tracks going toward Wolf Road. And here's the larger version of Desplains Manor 2, and I believe, let's see, was Hollywood, Chicago, or Sioux? Kathy? Kathy? Oh,
What?
we might have lost her.
You're frozen on my. No, I'm here.
Okay, you were frozen.
I was asking
was
you about Hollywood.
Yeah, which one was Hollywood? I'm asking you. It's Stump the Volunteer.
Sue.
Okay, so
Philip, please. 3 streets. What was the original name? How about what was the original name of Woodlawn, Hollywood, and North? Does anybody live in that area? Because I had no idea when I found this out. I had no idea.
yeah, so the original names of those streets going from the north, Chicago,
Was
Sioux,
north. Hollywood.
I don't know if it's pronounced Laux or Laux.
I don't know, Laux or
I'm not
Lokes.
sure. And then it's Walter and then Prairie. So
Those are the same, but I live on Woodlawn and it used to be Laux.
yeah. And then it was Sioux and Chicago going north. Sioux named after the Sioux Line Railroad tracks.
Do you know when they changed?
I do not know when they changed. But the Desplains Manor subdivisions opened in the early 1900s. I want to say 1911 for those two neighborhoods. So sometime after that, but I'm not sure when they changed. So
Okay.
I'm gonna mark that. I'm gonna mark that in the middle column where we somewhat answered the question.
Well, in the meantime, I know I did see a question in the chat from Judy Rosedale, so we can get to that one next. Judy wants to know what was the history of Shagbark Lake? And so I can do, I at least know not so much about the more recent history, but I can at least tell you how it started. This started as one of DesPlains' first industries, the brick making business. And this would have been in around 1868, a gentleman by the name of Franklin Whitcomb. And he would go on to establish the Whitcomb Brick and Tile Manufacturing Company. And so, as you can imagine, as DesPlains is starting to grow and starting to build, bricks are a very in-demand product. And so they're producing, I'm not sure what the exact number is, but hundreds of thousands of bricks per year. And eventually, he actually becomes one of the first village president of DesPlains in 1873. And of course, eventually, DesPlains does not continue to expand forever. And so George Whitcomb and his family go on, they continue the business with concrete products and other sorts of things like that. And the clay pits that were being used to produce these bricks ended up being filled with water from a natural spring. And that is what we now know as Shagbark Lake.
So I do know where the name Shagbark Lake comes from. Shagbark was a dog. The Combs family, or Coombs family, COOMBS is the family name, and that was their dog. His name was Shag, so they called him Shag. They called the lake Shagbark, and whether or not the lake was on their property, that I'm not 100% certain of, but definitely they lived in that general area and close enough to name the lake after their dog.
It's I believe not many now, but I want to say there are a few buildings left in the area that had Whitcomb bricks. So obviously a very important industry as DesPlains keeps growing. Kathy wanted a quick follow up there. Where is Shagbark Lake? And I believe it is, I have to look that one up.
It's east of River Road between Algonquin and Oakton.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, it's there's a housing development encircling that lake. And I want to say that was a mid-20th century development.
Is that
it's of course having been started in the 1860s, a long running, lots of changes to the landscape over time.
Is that where they put that fishing place? Like in the 50s?
No.
They had that fish?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about, and I don't think so.
Fisherman's Food Ranch
Yeah.
on Gulf Road.
I think Mr. Whitcomb made some of the bricks for the First Congregational Church at Prairie and Graceland.
I would not be surprised. Can either Siobhan or Philip confirm that?
No, but I think that Nancy might know a bit more about the Congregational Church.
I think he did, but I'm not 100% sure, but I'm almost sure.
Yeah, it seems like the right era, so it's feasible at least.
Yeah, because that would have been 1869. That's when the church was built.
Nancy, do you want to stump us while you're unmuted?
No.
Well,
I could say what did they say was the second business in DesPlains after Kinder Hardware?
Right
on Ellenwood.
On Ellenwood, after Kinder Hardware.
That would have been my family's, the Meinson family's saloon and
Oh, right.
Oh yes, of course.
Oh yes.
A very important business for any growing city.
Yeah, if you're gonna have a railroad, you have to have a saloon.
Yep. Well, I said that after you'd been shopping at the hardware store, you could walk down and have have something to eat and drink at the Meinson Saloon
Yeah.
and have your belt. It was whatever.
Okay, Marie, you dropped this question in the chat, and Linda, we'll circle back to you in a minute.
There's also there's a few more in the chat also, but let's do. I know Marie has been waiting for a bit, so let's make sure we get to Marie, and then we'll keep moving.
So Marie asked, what happened to Socrates Rand, and are there any descendants of his in the area? Socrates Rand sold off a good deal of his land. He was not only a land prospector, he also owned the grist mill for grinding grain in town. And those of you who remember the Clarence Earl House northeast of River and Minor, the big white house with the green patinaed copper dome, the kind of barn garage behind that house, north of that house, was originally Socrates Rand's grist mill. And so he had a small variety of things going. He made a good deal of money. He spent a good deal of money and didn't quite wind up penniless, but was not well off later in life. He died in the 1890s here. He's buried in Town of Maine Cemetery. And his wife died, I want to say not too long after that. I can't remember. I don't know much about descendants. I want to say that they didn't stick around, but this is something perhaps we'll be able to solve coming up. We received, so Dr. Clarence Earl, whose house I mentioned, he occupies the heart of Socrates Rand land later, after Socrates passed away. He was kind of the first historian of DesPlains and went to great lengths to gather as many primary documents from the early settlers and their descendants as possible. And in 2017, those were donated by Dr. Earl's grandson. And so we are in the process, we've organized them, and we're in the process of scanning them and transcribing them, and we have not made it to the Socrates Rand documents yet. So there's still a lot to learn. Siobhan, did you want to say anything more about that digitization project?
Here's one of the boxes.
I didn't realize you were off screen.
Yeah, I was going off to pull the RAND file from the Earl collection to see if we had anything immediately apparent in there about descendants and if who Dr. Earl may have been communicating with.
Yeah, because Dr. Earl wrote to track down and wrote to descendants, and those descendants wrote back the family stories or sent along some of the primary documents. So some of the oldest and most historically significant documents, they're in our possession. We just haven't gotten through understanding them yet. Okay.
We are making progress at least. And I'm very excited about we have got a wonderful collection of Civil War letters that we're going through at the moment. So I'm very excited to be able to share more details with everyone once we get finished with those.
Yeah. Dennis, our railroad man, asks, what is the name of the railroad that laid the first tracks through what is now downtown DesPlains? So what's now the Union Pacific Northwest line was formerly the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad. And before that, it was laid by a different company, and Dennis, you might be able to correct me. I believe it was the Chicago, St. Paul, and Fond du Lac Railroad.
You're correct.
All right, there we go. Another one answered. So that's the company that first laid the tracks through this area in 1854. And where that railroad crossed the DesPlains River, they dropped down a depot. The DesPlains River is a place to harvest water for the railroad. railroad was reliant on water at that time because these are coal-fired steam-powered locomotives. So you have to recharge with water from time to time. It's also a good place to harvest timber, to hew or saw your railroad ties, as well as build platforms and other structures that the railroad is reliant on, because timber runs along rivers in the prairie land. And from that focus, Socrates Rand made his subdivision, the town of Rand, what became downtown DesPlains, and the tilt, the diagonal of the railroad track is why downtown DesPlains is oriented on kind of a northwest, southeast sort of grid rather than a north, south, east, west compass grid. All right. Siobhan, did you turn anything up?
I did not turn anything up that was immediately apparent as being communications with descendants. There are some people he was communicating with that they weren't named Rand, so it's possible they were descendants, but through a female line, but without us having, more time to dig into the documents and see exactly if we can figure out from what Dr. Earl's writing to them about if it is a family member or just someone who is from the area and maybe remembered Socrates Rand that he was able to get in touch with. So unfortunately, I cannot fully answer that question right now. We have the information, but we haven't been able to dig deep enough into it yet to know for sure.
That said, there certainly are some very old DesPlains families that still do have descendants in the area. So it is not, it's not implausible, but we cannot say for certain at this time.
Yeah. Okay, Linda, we'll let you do one more, and then we want to demonstrate a couple things for you all and wrap up at 8 o'clock. So Linda, go ahead and unmute yourself.
This might be pretty easy. I live on East River Road, and there's a horse barn down the street. And there's also one on Ballard. And I wondered if there were any other horse barns in DesPlains. When I moved here 17 years ago, I read somewhere that there's 17 horse barns, and I just wondered if they were still around or not.
No.
There we go.
We live in the past here.
Yeah,
Linda, you're coming with some excellent questions here, and unfortunately, I want to say that there are not many horse barns like that left, but certainly.
I know that there is an active equestrian community that ride along the trail in the forest preserve.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know very much at all about them or where the stables are.
I would assume it would be in the unincorporated areas, because both of the ones near me are unincorporated areas, but
right.
Yeah.
And that could be something to do with regulations and whatnot. It could also just be a geographical circumstance where the trail is in or near the unincorporated area, and that's where the land is, the undeveloped land, to be able to have some room for the horses. But yeah, I'm not aware. I only know of the one that I've passed by a few times. I do know that we have some photos of a livery stable that was on Minor Street in the middle of town, but we're talking about late 1800s, around the early days of Kinder Hardware and that sort of thing.
Okay, sorry.
No,
that's great. These are some you have been so far done an excellent job of stumping the curators.
Yeah, that's the name of the game. Okay, I want to pass it over to Siobhan. She's going to briefly demonstrate for you our Past Perfect software. This is our museum database. Everything, all of the art artifacts and archives that come into the museum go through a process that we call accessioning, which you may have heard only in the context of royalty being coronated. And it's just a formal acknowledgement that we own this property and that we assign everything a serial number we call an accession number or an object number, and then everything gets recorded in the database. So Siobhan, go ahead and share your screen and take us away.
Sure. Okay, can you guys all see my screen? Past Perfect. All right, so this is Past Perfect. It's our collections management database, and it is a database system that's very commonly used in the museum world. And these pictures that are here in the middle, these are just pre-populated by the program. I have no idea whose museum they are from, but they are not ours. It just comes with the program. We don't have butterfly specimens that I know of. But when we receive donations into the collection and we accept them into the collection and everything, getting them cataloged and in our database is really the next step to getting them squared away. So our collection is split between these three modules that are here on the left: objects, photos, and archives. So archives is all of our paper materials, books, documents, correspondence, maps, restaurant menus, things that are paper-based, phone books, also yearbooks, and then our photos, self-explanatory, it's our photograph collection, and the objects are three-dimensional items, and that really runs the gamut from furniture to textiles, clothing, and the stuff we have in the Kinderhouse, and really anything that isn't flat and doesn't go in the archives and isn't made of paper. But I'll pull up one of our records here so that you can see kind of what information we have when we add things to our database. So like Philip said, every item, when it's accessioned into our collection, it's assigned an object identification number, which is this three decimal number here. So just like library catalog systems use the Dewey Decimal System to track their collection, we do a similar thing here. And everything can be found by that number in our database. We also physically mark the item itself as well, so that when we find it in storage, we know what it is and how to find the information associated with it. And this main page for the item in Past Perfect really is kind of our one-stop place to find all of the relevant information in one place and on one main screen, basically. So for this piece that I have right here, this is something we actually have in our aviation exhibit right now. It's Robert Radline's aerial gunner badge from World War II. So we have the object name listed up here. We have who donated it, which was his brother, Jim Radline. Here, and then just a description, a physical description of what the item is down in this description box, so that we know what it actually looks like. So if by chance it gets separated from its identification tag, we can figure out by process of elimination, basically, in the database, comparing our records against the actual item. We also have, importantly, the date or the year range when it falls in up at the top right, which is another big thing for us to place it in time and help us tell the story of the item. And the bulk of the information is here on this main page, but other pages that are very important are the location page, so where we can actually find this item, which in this case here, it's on temporary location in our gallery space. And then another page I use a lot is this notes and legal section, which allows us to put in more detailed information that will help us use this item to tell a story about DesPlains, but that isn't necessarily information you need on the main page because it's not the sort of thing you'd need if you were just trying to figure out what the heck this thing is. So for this one, I have a little bit of Robert Radline's service history in the military. And up here we have a blank space for our image. Our objects collection is a work in progress to get images taken of that, photographs of that, so that we have a visual idea of what we're looking at. But our photograph collection is mostly scanned, and our archival collection is also getting scanned as well. So we do have digital files, digital images for a lot of things in our collection these days as well. But when an item's donated, this is the next thing that happens. We get it all the information entered in here. And if you're contacting us about a possible donation, these are the pages we'll pull up to find out if we have anything like that in the collection or not. And if you contact us for a research request, Past Perfect is also someplace we will go to, especially to find photographs as well that might be relevant to what someone is looking for. So this isn't something we use just to manage the collection. It's also something we use for research as well. So it's a tool that is very useful to us.
Okay, thanks, Siobhan.
Yeah.
If you'll drop your screen from sharing, and I will share my screen. I want to show one more thing. I want to show off the brand new DesPlains Memory website. So I will. Oops. I've got a menu bar stacked on top of my menu bar. There we go. So Stephen Giese is here from the library. I think, did I see Joanne there as well? But this is the DesPlains Memory website, DesPlainsMemory.org. This is run by the DesPlains Public Library, but it is also an outlet for our collections now that we are going as digital as possible. So this is a place to do some local history research. We are still repopulating the website with our collections, things that you may have seen on DesPlains Memory before, or things that you'd like to see. We're getting as much as possible up there, and so it is a place where you can simply go and browse and look at what we've posted, what others have posted. You can even share your own photographs and memories. There's comment sections, and there's all ways to sort them. You can use the search bar at the top. You can apply filters. You can apply date range filters. We sort them into various categories here on the side. So if you want to see everything with the Cook County Forest Preserve that's posted there, we'll apply that. We'll see what, oh, there we go. Maybe that'll bring something up. Yeah, there we go. So these are the two photos currently posted that have to do with Cook County Forest Preserve. So we're looking forward as we continue scanning, as our partners over at the library continue finishing this rebuild of the website. This is a great way to get things out to public for research and for historical edification. And these will also be folded into the Digital Public Library of America, and hopefully some of our research resources here in DesPlains will reach a global audience who are doing all kinds of research. We can't even say the people that this will benefit, but it's a project worth doing. So thank you to all of our friends over at the library. And so there's more great things to come on DesPlainsMemory.org. I recommend staying tuned to our newsletter, our email newsletter, and our social media. We'll keep you all updated as that develops. So we're going to wrap it up there. We're right at 8 o'clock, so perfect timing. Thank you all for joining us. According to my little Post-it note here, stumped 3 times, sort of answered once, and we were able to answer 5. So the staff wins tonight.
I do want to see if you have more. I know a lot of people brought lots of questions. If you have more, by all means, please do send them to us, bring them in. We would love to get deeper on quite a few of the topics, especially the ones that we were not able to figure out tonight. So we want to hear more, guys. So we'll see. Please keep bringing those questions in.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Um,